Hello and welcome to The Digital Insight, the technology, procurement and supply chain podcast that delivers valuable C-level perspective into the core issues surrounding business transformation and digital disruption. Each episode will bring you the most inspiring executive insights from those who are leading transformation strategies within the world's biggest and best-known companies. The Digital Insight. Disrupt, transform, evolve.
Welcome to The Digital Insight, the official podcast series of CPO Strategy and Interface magazines. This week's guest is Olivia Brown, Managing Consultant at Rowe Advisory. Olivia is a highly experienced and accomplished procurement professional, and she joins us this week to discuss procurement excellence and how she views the future of this ever-changing function. Okay, so Olivia, welcome to the Digital Insight. Maybe it would be good for you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your current role and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrew. And thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm Olivia Brown. I'm a managing consultant with Rowe Advisory UK. I work in the area of contracts and procurement with Rowe Advisory, so we are subject matter experts in that discipline. We all come from a strong background of working in contracts and procurement. My career to date has been predominantly actually working for the first 16 years as an employee with oil and gas operators, both here in the UK and also internationally. So I have a solid base of working in contracts and procurement. More latterly in my employee career in the oil and gas industry, I was focused more on general management roles. I had a fantastic opportunity to work with our chief executive, Sir Frank Chapman at BG Group, where I had a real insight into the priorities at an executive level when running a business. And I then went on to lead a transformation with one of our business units at a general management level. So those roles in combination really with my experience in contracts and procurement led me to understand really what good looks like and also the things to avoid, also not just within the function, but more broadly within the wider business context. I started working as a consultant with Rowe Advisory in 2017, initially working in support of clients overseas in Australia. So Rowe Advisory was established in Australia by a very inspirational lady called Jodie Rowe. And I had the pleasure of working with her when I worked in Australia several years previously. And then she set up Rowe Advisory in 2013. And I started to get involved with some of the Australian clients in 2017, working remotely from here in the UK to support them in redefining, updating, reviewing their procedures and their processes initially. Typically what we find is a client will have a particular requirement for a particular area to look at and for focus that's a concern for them. So we will often go in and start to address that and help support with those initial documents or those initial areas for improvement. And from there, we then get involved in other areas for improvement as a consequence. So, for example, we get involved in the mandatory basic documents, the foundation documents, the governance for the department, and helping redefine and improve those. And then from there, help with embedding those changes through guidelines and training and implementation and sustaining of that. So, and since 2020, so 2020, we set up Rowe Advisory here in the UK. It was, in hindsight, it was difficult timing because we were launching the UK subsidiary right at the time of lockdown. So global pandemic, it really wasn't time to be really launching a consulting business in some respects. So we had the challenge of the pandemic, and then the compounded also by the oil price crash. So it was a difficult time to really to be launching, but nonetheless a real opportunity for us to really reestablish some individuals within our network and reconnect with previous colleagues to really tell them who we are and what we do, and make them aware of how we can help as and when the need arises, really.
So yeah, maybe you'd like to give us a little bit of an overview of Rowe Advisory and some of the services that you offer.
Yeah, of course. So there are a number of areas that we get involved in when working with procurement contracts and procurement departments with clients. We can offer one or a series of contracts engineers, procurement professionals, category managers to help with particular sourcing projects that they may have on at that particular time, particularly if there's a peak in activity, a particular capital investment program, or a category area that is high risk and or high spend, and they don't have any expertise in-house, then we can often find the relevant category managers to support the clients in delivering that, either, like I say, in terms of individuals or perhaps a team in providing that. And an extension of that is we've worked with clients where we provide the whole outsourced procurement department. So we can provide that service. We also get involved with clients in just a part of functional excellence, which has been about reviewing and redrafting their standards, their guidelines, and also tools and templates to help with implementation of that. So, approvals forms, checklists, etc. So we can get involved. We've done that in the past in a particular part of functional excellence. Or like we've been talking about today, really, the overall working with clients on functional excellence programs. That will often get involved in initially doing, an assess and review to look at a bit of a gap analysis, really, in terms of where they are right now versus where they want to get to. And through that program, we can do the full functional excellence program in identifying initiatives to focus on for now, understanding there may be other areas to improve or focus on in the future, but knowing what's right for that particular client based on where they are right now in that level of maturity, and then helping them with the program of implementation of that. And again, depending on client, will it depend on the level of our involvement through that phase. But we can provide the programmatic rigor, which really drives it forward. We can provide the subject matter expertise in actually delivering some of those under the clear ownership of a leader. Or we can really get involved in a more wider scale, wholesale improvement of departments. And often that's with smaller or less mature companies who haven't to date had any governance documents. So they've really, the department has been just really around transacting. And so we'll get involved in actually providing the whole operating model upon which generally they will then resource for themselves and then, sustain and move it forward. So that's the range of services within Rowe Advisory that we're involved in.
And obviously at the moment, certainly I, and I'm sure you do too, we hear a lot about the idea and the notion of procurement excellence. What's your kind of interpretation or definition of that, if you like?
So for us, it's about aligning the strategy and the delivery of third-party spend really with the needs of the business. It's really connecting the department's activity with the business priorities. And really to best achieve that, we kind of see a focus on the overall procurement operating model. Like I said earlier, often there are particular areas of concern already with the chief procurement officers in terms of areas they recognise they need to improve in. But generally, when we get involved with a new client, we will often take the opportunity to review the whole operating model to really be a bit more holistic in the review and understand really how joint up the department can be in providing that procurement excellence, that functional excellence back to the business. For us, it's really about the department adding real value back to the business, establishing credibility through delivering of value to the business. For us, that's more around, it's about very much more than just savings. It's about looking more generally around the business, how the department can add that value back. And so really, like I say, looking at the operating model, so we'll look at the people, the process, the systems and the tools to really focus on how the department can manage risk, provide clear strategic planning, be really aligned with the business objectives, be innovative, be creative, and also collaborative, both internally with the business and the demand owners for the requirements, and also with the supply chain and externally. So having that market intelligence and engagement, not just with existing suppliers, but more widely. And really having good clarity on the roles, responsibilities, and the capabilities required within the department to deliver that value back to the business. And at the part of that is really about working to elevate the role of the procurement department. Like I said earlier, it's very much more about it, more than savings. The supply chain department has the potential to provide significant benefits to the business, and they extend very much more beyond the P&L impact. I think the events from the last year and a half with the pandemic have really proven the importance of procurement departments and non-financial performance incentives, and being a bit more and to have those non-financial performance metrics a bit more integral to the priorities for procurement. That having been said, often we recognise the need to really get the basics right first. So it's about having clarity on roles and responsibilities, both within the department and the business, so how they really work together in collaboration to deliver the best value through the supply chain. It's about having data-driven decision-making as well. We see with some clients that's not very strong, and it's really very hard to both make informed decisions without access to that data, and indeed to be able to elevate to an executive level the value that the department's really bringing if you can't provide some of those key metrics in terms of the data. And I think it's around actually also being able to demonstrate the value the department brings to the senior leadership of a company through some key metrics, which can be done on a frequent basis, which really allows the business to see in a very clear and data-driven way quite how the department is performing, and really in a way which can't really be disputed, the value that procurement team is bringing to the company, and also to be able to escalate any concerns in terms of where the value is being eroded, understand why that is, and be able to very effectively work through those issues.
I see. And obviously you must deal with clients from a variety of industries and sectors. What kind of interesting trends have you seen develop through your work, crossing those sectors, if you like?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think the most interesting thing for me, so having come from a strong background in oil and gas with operators, I think the thing we found in recent years in becoming involved in the wider energy sector, so becoming involved in renewables, working with clients in renewables, cleaner energy, and also beyond energy into infrastructure, construction. I think one of the things that I've it's obvious, but at the time didn't really think about it, was that actually a lot of these areas of focus that I've talked about in terms of areas for improvement and what functional excellence can look like are very much sector agnostic. The tactical interventions do vary depending on each client. So the particular areas of focus will always vary by client, but that's true within any sector. But we've seen that transcend into other sectors. But the fundamentals on what good looks like in procurement are we've observed are sector agnostic. So that's been very interesting, and it's allowed us to provide diversity of thought into new sectors. So based on, if you think about demand planning and category management, we've seen some worked with some clients where it works very well, and we've been able to translate that knowledge and experience and working with them in embedding that and sustaining it and building on it. We've been able to take that and translate that into other sectors who have been less familiar with the concept of category management and category planning, and the real importance of that in the upfront strategic planning, where real value can be set for procurement. One of the things we find is actually with in some sectors more than others, I think, the procurement department is seen as a transactional function. And absolutely, there is a strong requirement for there to be good transacting within any procurement team. But in the context of functional excellence, what we try to do is to explain the value that can really be delivered through moving beyond that phase of the department into the strategic, and doing that in an appropriately segmented way so that it is differentiated based on value and risk and other factors which are relevant, but ensuring that both the department and the business, as well as the executive, are really focused on those handful of key critical contracts to the delivery of the business. So we work on ensuring that the focus is in the right place to deliver value, getting the transacting right, and then also, of course, post-award. So again, a lot of focus is on the transacting. The contract is then executed, and it's not about necessarily just putting it on the shelf and leaving the business to just manage it in the day. Certainly for a number of contracts, is really about managing those contracts for delivery and being clear on the role that the procurement department plays in that process relative to that of their colleagues in the technical ownership side, to be sure that those roles are clear and that everyone can collaborate to ensure that the value as intended right at the outset in the strategy is delivered post-award. And a further development on that is really, again, being how many of those need to be strategically managed? How do you strategically manage the relationship with key suppliers to again, further leverage the value through innovation, being creative, working together to further enhance the value that can be achieved? So it's so, like I say, coming back to the question, I think that the trends and the sector differences at a tactical level are often there in terms of the templates, contract templates which are being used, the resource base required. Again, we work with some clients who have responsibility for the overall supply chain and others who really just focus on contracting for goods and services with materials, inventory, logistics sitting elsewhere. So it will very much depend on a client by client basis. But like I say, the fun of it really for us has been in being able to take the knowledge we've gathered and the experience from other sectors and other clients, and being able to establish on a fit for purpose basis, essentially, those elements which will be relevant to clients, because the principles of procurement are generally the same regardless of sector, but it's really very important. We've seen through experience of understanding the level of maturity of each client on that on the scale of functional excellence, and being able to have set in place a journey almost of priorities, of things to look at on their journey on functional excellence. Because it would be very easy to apply a one solution fits all. You have a bucket, a list of initiatives that you would look to apply deploy regardless of client, but that just doesn't work like that. That's not a sustainable approach to take for any procurement department. So the areas of focus for each client will differ depending on where they sit on that maturity scale. But knowing that subsequent phases can come on, but I think it's really important to get the basics right. And then from that solid base, once that's embedded in terms of clarity of roles and responsibilities, what the value drivers are, the alignment into the overall business strategy. Once that's in place, then you can build in some of these more functional improvement opportunities through demand planning, category management, the data and how it is, the systems and tools which help support that, as well as transacting, being efficient and effective through that process. So not being, overly bureaucratic, but making sure the right forms and gateways are in place at the right place through into post-award. So it's generally similar regardless of sector, although the individual interventions will vary.
And obviously, in any change or transformation, any enterprise and in any function, there's that management of change, isn't there, that needs to be implemented. How do you support your clients during these times when obviously, there's apprehension and maybe a bit of fear and a lot of excitement around the changes of their companies?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, because we've seen it, varying levels of expertise in this area of change management. And I think for us, it's about having real alignment, a good understanding from the Chief Procurement Officer quite what their vision is for the department, and helping them to really articulate that, both within to the department, so to the leadership team and the wider supply chain function, and then into the business. Because often they'll have a sense that it's just not quite right, some things need to change, but having real clarity on the case for change, particularly when the data is perhaps weak, is actually sometimes harder than you would first think. So getting that real clarity of case for change and the buy-in from the leadership team, I think there's a balance between it being an engagement and a tell. So the vision has to be very clear in terms of where the function needs to go, and then actually the real strong level of engagement from within the function to be sure that that's actually bought into. The case for change is important because people, you're asking people to change, and the response will be, well, what's in it for me? We've done it like this for years and it's been fine. So help me understand. And you need to kind of take people on that journey of change. You can't embed and sustain the changes just by telling, although there is a very strong need for, alongside that engagement, for there to be a tell. So clarity on, single point decision making, understanding that when a decision is taken, that's not the start of a conversation on the matter. It clarifies the need to move on. So that kind of cultural change often goes alongside some of these programs, depending on the level of change that you're looking at. We're talking here about functional excellence, which is what one area of our work. We get involved in providing contracts engineers into operators and supporting them with bespoke programs as well in particular areas of contracting perhaps they need some expertise in. But I would say in the context of the work we do with clients on functional excellence, it almost always will have a wrapper of culture and behaviours behind it that we really need to manage and ensure that there's good engagement, communication, and people management through that process. The other element, which is really critical to the ability to embed any change, is the support from senior management. It's a case of communicating the vision of the department to them, and then also telling them what you need from them, in terms of their reinforcement of messaging, both internally and externally when they're operating at an executive level in external forums. So consistency of messaging will be very important, as well as consistency in behaviour. And that will be important in driving a change, certainly within the business. You cannot be what you cannot see. And so if you don't see that focus on the right areas in the supply chain from the executives, then it's very much harder to embed any changes at that level. But again, the approach very much differs depending on the needs of clients. So it might be that they really just want to focus on getting the procedure correct, or the mandatory documents, the standards, the policies. And from there, they may then leverage the changes themselves. But I think that regardless of the role that we play in that process, the key elements that are critical to any change are around defining and clarity on the case for change and the senior management support in implementing that.
And obviously, working with your clients on these kind of procurement transformation projects must be quite a satisfying experience when you start to see these changes bearing fruit. Yeah,
no, absolutely, and it's our core area of expertise, and we have that real passion for procurement and want to really be ambassadors for what good can look like, and we want the clients to feel that as well. It can never really be implemented and sustained based on a consultant coming in and telling you how to do it. It's very much about working alongside the client in their particular environment, to understand how best to do that, but to really reinstill and drive some energy and passion into the department for procurement and what good can look like, and the role that they can play in that. Often it's hard when you just got contracts coming in from everywhere, and you've got forms to fill in and tenders to process and to evaluate, and approvals and tender boards. It's very hard to be able to elevate above that and to really appreciate the role and the value that you can play in making a real difference. Again, we see that actually often there's a disconnect between what's happening on the ground within the department and where the business is heading strategically. So it's trying to make the connection between the fact that actually what we're doing here is very much in support of that. So it's about, holding your head up high and saying, I'm not just here to paper process and to wrap fait accomplis up with a nice ribbon and put it on the shelf. We're here because we deserve to be here. We've got a good approach to how we're going to spend and invest our third party, strategies. So we've got to be able to come to the table with the right skills and the right operating model in order to deliver that. So it's providing some confidence into the department to say this is, it's important to the business, so make it important to you so that you can be inspired and motivated to do it. Really, where we talk about the department, we want it to be seen as the gateway to progress, and not the gatekeeper. And we work with clients in order to allow that. So it's not about constantly going back to the business to say, well, you can't do it like this because the form says you've got to do it like that. You have to be a lot more collaborative in the approach. Now, of course, the department owns the process, and as a consequence of that, we'll need to enforce it. And sometimes there will be, disputes around what the right approach to take will be with a particular contracted service or vendor. But there's, those conversations, it has to be driven by what's right for the company and not what it says on the paper. So it's about getting to that, that driving that cultural change to get to that place. so it's about delivering value, driving improvement, and also for us, in terms of the satisfaction in the role, it's about seeing the recommendations being implemented, seeing them being owned, and then sustained by clients, and for them to be able to build on that, whether we're involved in that process or not. It's the role that they then take on as a department, a strengthened department that they can then build on. Like I said, it's not about a series of initiatives being defined by us and imposed on the client. You have to have clear ownership within the client to really define and implement it, and really be accountable for delivery of that. Because I think when you make people accountable for these initiatives, they do step up and take ownership of it, and they want to be part of the change. Everyone wants to be part of the change, but it's very hard when you're caught up in the day and you're frustrated. So for us, it's satisfying when they take on the ownership and they play back the work that's been done in their particular context, and they can embed it, and then they can build on that.
I see. And tell me a little bit about Promethea Procurement. It sounds quite interesting.
So Promethea Procurement was established 2020. It is an online platform for procurement templates and also advisory services. So it's a web-based system. So anyone can go on and buy and download the whole series of procurement templates across the whole life cycle. So it ranges from demand planning, strategy setting, through to people and competencies and skills matrices, development planning, performance management, through the procurement life cycle itself, through the transacting, into post-award, and supplier relationship management. So they're documents which can, at the click of a button, become available to companies, which is, fantastic. We find allows us to diversify further into new sectors who may otherwise not be able to come to us for the full suite of consultancy services. So if they simply just want a series of tools to help improve governance, then this is a great place to go to. Alongside that, we can offer advisory services to support perhaps tailoring of the models to suit their individual requirements, and or with providing advice on how best to implement the changes in the templates. So that, like I say, they're booked electronically. The advisory services, again, are booked online. It's been a fantastic diversification, really, of the skill sets that we have to access smaller sectors who may otherwise not have come to us for our advisory services. And it works, very much hand in hand with Rowe Advisory, in terms of the consultants that are used, and also the opportunity to access some of the skills and knowledge that we have across our suite of consultants who have come from a number of sectors. And again, ensuring the right consultant will advise the right client who comes to us through Promethea in terms of implementation of documents. So it's been a really interesting process to access these new sectors, and another string to the bow of the company to really just harness some of the knowledge that we have to diversify further.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Insight Podcast in association with the Interface.net and CPOstrategy.com. The Digital Insight is brought to you by B2E Media Limited. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate and review. And don't forget to check out our podcast archive at www.b2e-media.com/The Digital Insight.